Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Coffee and Conversations. I am Sam Harvey from the Center for Career and Professional Development, and today we're going to talk about benefits. So, as we've been focusing on job offers and negotiations, I wanted to take some time to talk a little bit more about benefits, as these are the things that kind of come outside of just the natural regular salary. So, these can be a great area to work with during the negotiation process. Maybe not all the time, but definitely a potential area for negotiation, especially if they can't meet what you're looking for salary wise. It's important to understand benefits also because oftentimes a low paying job with great benefits can often lead to you being in a better financial spot than a high paying job with bad benefits. So if you're making over 100K a year, but they're not covering any of your medical premiums, that might end up putting you might as well just be making, I don't know, I'm going to pull a random number, 95 a year or 90 a year at that point, because you're spending extra money on these extra things that benefits often will cover. So anything in general that I just want to point out within benefits as you're kind of looking at your things. So if anything says it comes out of your gross pay, that means that it's going to count as pre-tax dollars. And that's really important to know because that's money that you will not end up paying taxes on, which is also a really great thing to know as far as benefits. So there is a benefit to not necessarily paying tax on all the money that you do. So I'll explain through a little bit more in depth what things could be and what things may or may not count as pre-tax as we go. But once more, it's just always really going to be important to look at what has been offered directly to you, paying attention to the contract that you have been handed while you're figuring this out. So the first type of benefit I'm going to talk about will be health insurance. So this is really the most common benefit. And your employer is required to offer health insurance plans that meet with the government's guidelines at the time. And it's usually cheaper for you to purchase your health insurance through your employer than it will be to do on your own, but you're also free to look at independent health options. You're not required to take the health option through your job, especially if you're a traditionally aged student, and I believe that you're allowed to be covered by your parents' plan until 26 at this point. So that might be an option that you take right after school. I have plenty of friends that have done that option as well. So you're allowed to shop around and look, but it's often cheaper to go through your work than it will be to go on your own. Some companies may require a certain level of qualification in order for you to qualify for health insurance, the most common one being that you work there full time. Sometimes it may be that you need to be working there for a month or something before it actually is allowed to be kicked in. Some companies will cover the cost of the insurance completely, and others will pay a portion of the cost. Some won't cover any of the cost, so it's always important to know what percentage of the premium they'll cover. That's basically the cost of just having the insurance that you get. You'll still have to generally cover your out-of-pocket expenses and anything that the insurance doesn't cover, but that might be a potential thing depending on the company. For example, and I'm going to mention more about flex saving accounts later, but you might have your health insurance, but you also might be able to get a flex spending account, and at some places they might give you a certain amount of money in that flex spending account, and that's to be used towards your health-based benefits. So once more, it's going to depend company to company. It's important to also consider when you're looking at this, who else can be covered. Are you allowed to have family members cover? And from that, what will they cover? If you add a family member, are you paying fully for that? Or will they also cover some percentage of a family members being included on your plan? It's important to also know what they might mean by significant others. Sometimes that might require you to be legally married or legal spouses, which basically it involves some sort of paperwork. Some places, nope, whatever, you live together, that's fine, whatever, it's fine. It's going to depend company to company, and that's important questions to kind of figure out as you're going along, potentially before you accept the offer, if it's something that's potentially going to get you more interested in the job or less interested in the job, depending on what the answer ends up being. When choosing insurance plans, then, take the time to read them over. Often they can seem really foreign to look at, but read closely and Google as you go. You basically want to pay attention to what they do and don't cover, and choose based off an estimate of what you see yourself needing for the coming year, which can be really hard. It's hard to look ahead and be like, do I think I'm going to end up in an accident this year? For the most part, your plan is like, no, I don't really think I'm going to. Um, and but plan ahead for certain things. You don't know what might come up. It's always good to kind of understand where you are in your current health situation. I would definitely, if you're on a current insurance now, at least try and get a checkup before you have to switch insurances. If you're generally a relatively healthy person that doesn't require certain extra visits depending on any pre-existing conditions, a basic plan that will cover your checkups with a general bit of coverage for urgent assistance is good to have. But also see what you're kind of thinking about. Is there something you've been putting off getting looked at because of where your health insurance is right now? Potentially you pay into the slightly higher premium that will help cover more of that percentage, more of that active that process. I don't think that's the right word, but that can help cover looking into that. It's also really good to look around and see if the current providers you have will accept the different insurances. Depending on the companies, you might be offered one insurance company to work with, and you'll see from there basically they'll have high plans, low plans as far as cost. Some companies might offer you plans with a handful of different types of insurance companies, so it can be really good to look and see who takes those insurances. Either I think ZocDoc is a really great tool of just kind of putting in some insurance stuff and doing at least a quick search around to see where that falls, because you don't want to necessarily take something if a provider you really like won't take that one. You also, if the provider you like won't take the insurance you have, is there an insurance that has better coverage for out-of-network costs? So in-network basically means if the doctor takes that insurance policy, then usually general checkups will be covered, or you'll have whatever your copay is, versus an out-of-network isn't necessarily covered, or they only cover a small percentage or a smaller percentage of what that means, meaning that the doctor doesn't negotiate with that insurance company. The copay means the money that you pay at the appointment itself. So you show up to just get your regular checkup, you might have a $20 copay. That's money you pay to the company, to the doctor right then and there. Then later you might get a bill for any other tests that your insurance possibly doesn't cover, potentially different blood tests, anything like that. Your deductible is the amount of money that you pay before the insurance company will start to cover certain procedures. So that's something like if you need to get your heart checked out in some way, if you need to, I'm trying to think of medical procedures that I know of. If it's anything basically extra beyond your usual health needs, the deductible is basically what you'll pay after the insurance company negotiates with the doctor to lower that price. It's the remaining, and there's a certain amount that they expect you to pay in before they will cover certain amounts. So you'll find some places with really high deductibles and some with lower deductibles tend to be more expensive plans. So that's why you might take the less expensive plan if you really don't anticipate having a lot of other expenses outside of your general preventative care checkups. So hopefully that's a little bit clearer as far as what health insurance can look like. Googling around, talk to other people that have it, know you're not in choosing alone, and it can often seem really weird and strange, and there's a lot of options to go through. It's always really nice to take the time and really sit down and look through the options that have been offered for you. It probably won't be the thing that makes or break if you take a job or not, but understanding the plan options is really good for just you as you're planning for your year. The next type of benefit I want to talk about is retirement. So the most common type of retirement fund you probably would have heard of before is a 401k. Most companies will offer some sort of retirement funding, and it's definitely recommended you put something into it. This is the money that when you put in your early 20s is going to grow over time to support you in your retirement. So yes, the money you put in your like late 30s and 40s will be there to support you, but your retirement fund accrues interest over time. So the longer the money's in there, the more interest it will accrue, therefore making your total bigger and therefore accruing more interest. So it's kind of like if you have a bunch of bunnies in one spot. So the first bunnies you put in there are going to start making bunnies, and those are going to start to multiply. And as you put more bunnies in, that will start to multiply, but those original bunnies will still be multiplying with your new bunnies. And you end up with way more bunnies than anyone should ever want in the end, but they're going to be really cute. So as far as types of retirement funds, there's a 401k or sometimes there's a 403b. I'm going to be honest, I don't know full in and outs of a lot of these, but what I do know is that these come out pre-tax. So the money that you put into the retirement counts as pre-tax money, once more lowering the amount that you're going to be paying taxes on for any given year. The other type of thing you might run into is something called an IRA, which is a Roth individual retirement account. This is a post-tax put-in, so you've already been taxed on the money when you put it in. From what I know, I believe that means that when you take out of a 401k, you may have to pay taxes on it, versus when you take out of an IRA, you might not. Once more, I am not an expert on this, but understanding the difference between pre-tax and post-tax. 401k, you won't pay the tax on it. When you're putting it in IRA, you will pay the tax as the money is going in. The important thing you want to know about your company is if they have any sort of matching program. So often companies will match your contributions up to a certain amount, a certain percentage. They might match 6% or something like that. It's important to know how long it is within that before you are vested, and that's specifically for, I believe, a 401k program. So being vested means how long it is before this retirement fund is 100% yours. Generally, it's 5 years. Basically, if you leave a company before you've been vested, the company can take back the amount they put into the 401k. So staying at the company for the amount of time it takes to vest is going to highly increase your savings over time. This is just important as you're kind of looking into your retirement options to know, because you want to make sure, one, even if you're not planning to stay for 5 years, it's still nice to put some money away, because that is money that will save up and add up over time. But if you might be at the company for a while, figure out what that timeline might look like, and that can really change what it means to be at a company and what this job can mean as far as your long-term sort of view of what's going on to happen in your future. Yeah. So vacation and sick time. So this is basically the most other common benefit that people know about already. So these are both considered generally paid time off. You'll generally be given an amount for a year when you're first getting the job. They'll be like, yeah, you get 10 sick days a year or 10 vacation days a year. But you'll have to accrue that time as you work. So you don't just start a job on day one and then have 10 days of vacation. So when you first start working, over the course of the first week, the first month, you start to earn time. The way this accrues will be changed based off the company, so it's important to kind of figure that out at the job. Is how do you accrue? Is it for every 3 days you work, you get a day? It's probably broken out a little bit by how much you're actually working and how that spreads out across the entire year. But figure that out, because that will also let you know how soon you can take vacation, which not the best thing to do the first week of your job, to ask when you can get a vacation, but it can be important to know. Some places will let you borrow against vacation time, so this would mean taking some time ahead of it with an understanding that that's time you'll not get back later on. When you work somewhere longer, you're going to gain additional days, and when you leave and start a new job, you may end up losing those extra days. Often you'll get those extra days from some sort of seniority. It's after you've worked here for 5 years. Instead of 10 days off, you get 15 days off. At a new place, you might have a senior level job, but you're still a new person working there, and therefore you're on whatever their new employee plan is going to be. This is a potential great place to negotiate is, well, new employees get 10 days off. Okay, you're used to getting 20 days off. Can you get 15? Can you get 13? It's a great place to kind of look and see, is there any sort of wiggle room for you to get that extra time off because you've been working for a certain amount of time and in previous positions have gotten this much time. The other thing to consider is that when you leave a company, if you have sick or vacation days you accrued but did not use, you may be entitled for payment from those days. Pay attention during the onboarding process and don't be afraid to ask about that policy on your way out. I doubt it's something that companies are always touting, but honestly, they might be. But be aware of any of the days you didn't use because it's basically you're being paid your salary to work a certain amount of time, and that vacation and sick time is an expectation of you not working. So there is sometimes a form of back pay involved when you leave because of that, around that. Each year it's likely that you'll be able to carry over a certain amount of vacation days. This will depend company to company. Some will be up to a year, some will be, you can carry over half. It's going to depend. I always recommend within one, figuring out what is allowed, but also saving a couple of days, especially after your first year of working. If you're able to, usually if it's your first time working right out of college, you don't have a lot of money to go on vacations all the time, but it's good to have those extra days so you can plan up for a bigger vacation later on down the line. But do know those days add up really quickly, and sometimes it can be really hard to use all your vacation days, so just be aware, but also know you probably have more than you expect you do, and keep track throughout. Sick days is hard. I think it depends on the company. In the case of Pratt, it's use them or lose them, so sometimes it's good to take them. And a sick day, depending on the company's exact policy, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get out of bed. Sick days are often rebranded at this point as personal days, so they can be for taking care of somebody because you're having a stressful personal lifetime right now. Depends on the company you're working for. I was just reading something the other day where somebody had to call into the company and talk to a nurse practitioner when they were taking a sick day. So it's going to vary by the company. It's important to see what their policies are on sick days. Do you need to bring a doctor's note? What does that look like? Is there even a cap? A lot of companies, we've seen some newer companies have leaned towards your personal time is your personal time. As long as you get the work done, you're good. That still doesn't mean you can't just not show up, but that there's not necessarily this idea of there's a capped number of time that you get off. Along with sick and vacation days, it's also good to see what other holidays you get off. So they can be really standard things like Thanksgiving or the end of year holiday. But it's also good to know that there's sometimes things called floating holidays. You can take more when you want. So a lot of places will give you sort of a spring holiday, and if they're not saying, oh, the spring holiday is on this date, they allow you to kind of choose when that date will fall. So it's good to know when those things happen. It's also just good to know as you're transitioning into a new company what holidays they give you off, because while there's bank holidays that are pretty regularly given off to everyone, things like President's Day, potentially I think Memorial Day is one, but President's Day is not necessarily a standard given across the board vacation. So always nice to kind of see, do I actually get that one or not? So life insurance. This is another fairly common benefit. This most general thing I found was that they'll cover up to a year's salary, maybe less, maybe more. And there's usually an option for you to purchase more coverage. So life insurance is the money that can help your loved ones pay for your burial expenses in the event of your death. Never a fun thing to think about, but still a really important thing to keep in mind. When you sign up for life insurance, you will require, they'll require you to pick a beneficiary. So this is the person that gets the life insurance money. And you will need that person's social security number when you fill out that information. So it's good to think about that a little bit ahead of time and reach out to the person to, one, let them know, but also to get this information for them. You can usually change that person later with human resources. Life insurance through work is an awesome thing, but it shouldn't necessarily only be your only source. Just because if you lose the job, you do lose coverage. Definitely, especially if you have a family, an important thing to think about. But if you do have barriers to qualifying for life insurance, maximize the options through your job, because those barriers can be really hard to make it really hard to get what you're looking for, and you want to try and make sure you're covered. Stock options. This is a really, really common benefit, especially around startups. So stock options allow you to purchase stock in the company at a discounted rate. Sometimes there's a wait before you can purchase, and there might be a cap on how much you can purchase. It might also be semi-based off how many years you work there, and then for a certain amount of years, then it caps off. I have stock in a company I worked for right out of college, so theirs was that once I left the position, I could buy into the stock, and it was based off how long I had worked there, that I could purchase a certain amount. There may be a waiting time before you're allowed to sell your shares, so you might be able to buy them, but you can't sell them for a year, 6 months, something like that. And this is a really great option as far as thinking of a larger payout that you might get later on. So stocks are not something that necessarily pay off right when you get them, especially if there's a waiting period before you can sell them. But if you think about, this is a pretty common story, but the people that bought early stock in Google and Apple, who were potential employees, that was something that years down the line they made out pretty well with, and even just getting and collecting the I can't think of the word, but basically you can get pretty good payouts later on. And even if you only have a couple of options, like a couple of stocks in a company, a little bit of extra money is always a really nice thing later on down the line, especially if it ends up being more than you paid for the stocks to begin with. If you're working for a company that you think has a really good likelihood of succeeding or selling later on down the road, I would definitely recommend looking into some of the stock options that might be available, because you can, as someone who's kind of worked there, you can kind of see the potential trajectory of the company. And while it does cost money up front, it's about kind of seeing where that money might end up later. Okay, so now I'm kind of gonna smoosh in a bunch of others really quickly, as far as other types of benefits might be. So for me as a young professional development is one of the most important benefits. So this is money that allows me to travel to conferences, take educational courses that the company pays for. So this is really important for trying to stay up to date on your industry and networking outside of your usual community. These funds are also really helpful for the place you're working in, because whatever you learn from going to this new place, you're going to bring back and share with the community at large. So it's something I really enjoy having access to, and definitely something I would talk to your company about, because I have a lot of friends that don't necessarily have professional development opportunities as available to them. You want to look in the opportunity for growth and bonuses. So this is growth meaning like promotions. It's important because this will allow you to see how long it's going to be before things change. So really looking ahead for things like potential new titles, larger salaries, or the end of the year bonuses you might receive. You want to be sure that it's probable that you'll be able to get these and not just possible. So how quickly do promotions tend to happen? What type of pay bump could potentially be expected? Are bonuses used instead of raises? What structures and are there in place, and how do you earn a bonus? All really important things to kind of understand as you're taking the job, because they might say, yeah, there'll totally be opportunity for you to get promoted later on, but you don't want that to be 5 years later. So I'm going to talk a little bit about types of bonuses right now. And these are just kind of important for you to understand once more as you're reading through the papers what might be offered to you. So there's profit sharing. So this means that all people that work in the company are getting a percentage of company earnings. It might be a really low percentage, it might be a higher one. It's probably on the lower side. There's gains sharing. So this is payouts for statistical improvements in production and quality on a quarterly or monthly basis. So basically, as you improve and show improvement, you potentially are able to earn more over time. Spot bonuses, these are quick achievements. It can be anything from $50 and up just for being helpful. It's employee of the month, it's thanks for your time doing this, anything like that. There is non-cash bonuses. These are things that are like named employee of the month. So there could be employee of the month that comes with a little incentive, or employee of the month that just comes in title. It can be small prizes. It can be a party offered at the end of the year. Those things kind of count as bonuses. You get a sign-on bonuses. These are given to new employees, so it's a little bit of extra money right at the beginning. Mission bonuses, these are often given to a team for achieving something. So like, oh, you were chosen by the company, your pitch was chosen. Here's a bonus for that. Referral bonuses, these are given if you refer somebody to a job and they hire that person. Sometimes they have to work in the position for a certain amount of time before they'll actually give you the payout for that. Holiday bonuses, often small gifts, cash celebrations, or what's commonly referred to as the 13th month salary. It is recommended that when you are looking for new positions, if you have been receiving a 13th month salary, to include that in your overall salary as well, like add that extra money on. And sales commissions, and that's a percentage for sales volumes or for hitting specific sales goals. That was a lot, but those are kind of common bonuses. So some other benefits. As I mentioned a little earlier, flexible spending accounts are pretty common. These are usually regulated by the government, but they allow you to set aside pre-tax money for things like medical, daycare, and transportation expenses. And once more, it allows you to decrease your taxable income. Other insurance options you might find are dental, vision, and disability. Disability covers you if you end up injured. Dental and vision may be included in your medical plans, so always look really specifically at your plans to see what might be included on top of just the regular medical plan. Sometimes you'll have to pay an extra though for the dental and vision, and it's fully up to you to decide. There will usually be a period of open enrollment through your company for insurance, and where you get to decide for the upcoming year what you're opting into, what you're choosing. You can always opt into something one year, and then the next year you may decide to opt out of it. So you could do vision one year and then not the next if you're not someone who needs glasses that regularly. So it's always kind of worth seeing and playing around with. But that open enrollment period you want to be really vigilant about, because if anytime you don't make any changes, what you did the year before will just roll over. Or if they've made changes, there'll probably be some form of rollover that will happen. They'll let you know about it. So and more. So in my and more, some potential other benefits are things like tuition reimbursements, student loan repayment assistance, the ability to telecommute. That's a really nice one, to be able to know if you can work from home and how often you might be able to do that. Overtime pay, family leave or maternity leave, some things like Zipcar discounts, museum memberships, what the organization just has going on as a whole. Basically, if you're offered something and you don't fully understand it, go talk to HR, ask the people in your life. There's a ton of great resources also on the internet. For a lot of this, I just Googled understanding benefits. But basically, benefits are a really, really wide mix of different options, and they're basically anything outside of salary that this company can offer you. Usually there might be some monetary connection within there somehow, but what can this company give you outside of just paying you for the amount that you hopefully asked for, and consider all of these things when you're deciding if a position is right for you, especially if they can't reach the salary that you wanted. See how these other things might go towards helping benefit you in the long run in terms of financial stability, and setting you up for potential positions either within this company or at the next company. Okay, as always, thanks for joining me and have a great day.